Dillon. Dillon's a self-employed carpenter. Dillon is a qualified carpenter with over 10 years experience in the construction industry. After completing his apprenticeship in 2014, he went on to establish and run a successful small business, worked for large architectural building companies. This included everything from simple residential extensions to extravagant commercial architectural pieces. Dillon had a change of heart at the end of 2019 and decided to move into youth work, which he is currently completing a cert for in. So welcome, Dillon, and over to you.
Thanks, Tom. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me. So I'm just going to do a bit of overview of working in the construction industry as a carpenter, from my journey to what you can expect as an apprentice and your options going forward and the opportunities that arise from doing it. So,
all right. So this is the basic overview of what we're going to cover today. So it's reasons for taking up this career, history of carpentry, my career, friends and colleagues' experiences, a day in the life, options during and after qualification, what is required and expected of you, OH&S, what you deserve, goal setting on the journey to qualification. So the main reasons that I found for taking up carpentry: it's a rewarding career, make new friends, problem solving, creativity, and diverse work opportunities. So a bit of a history of carpentry. So the word carpenter is derived from the Latin carpenterius, which is maker of a carriage. So it's a pretty old trade. It's the oldest trade in existence, with timber being used as a building product as early as the Stone Age, some 2.6 million years ago. So long line of carpenters, including Harrison Ford, Jesus Christ, and Bob the Builder. So with a bit about my career, before my apprenticeship, I finished year 12 in 2005, so a few years ago now. And I worked working for a landscape gardener for a few years. I worked for an arborist, and I did some labouring on a building site as well for a little while. So while I was working as a landscape gardener, a family friend who owned a building company offered me an apprenticeship, and that's how I started. Wasn't something that I was necessarily seeking out, but a few of my friends had started apprenticeships and it seemed like a good option. So there's many ways that you can sort of end up going down this journey. And so I worked for two different companies while I was doing my apprenticeship, one for a sort of larger architectural firm, and then I worked for a friend of mine just doing smaller residential extensions. And then since I've been qualified, I've worked for multiple builders, worked overseas for a little bit, worked interstate, and then I settled in Melbourne 3 years ago and started my own carpentry business, doing small renovations, extensions, and things like that. So quite a few of my friends have or are doing apprenticeships. So I just thought I'd run through a brief way they went about getting their apprenticeships, because they're all different, and what they've gone on to do. So a friend of mine, Josh, he's a plumber, and he was working for his dad, who was a landscape gardener. They had a plumber on site and he was looking for an apprentice. He offered him a job and he ended up taking up that apprenticeship through that work connection of working in the industry. Another friend of mine, Dylan, he is a carpenter, and he was desperate to do a carpentry apprenticeship He really wanted to do it. So he went out, he did his Cert 2, so pre-apprenticeship. He basically just went around to building sites and just hassled people, which is often, sounds a bit funny, but it's often to show how keen you are, rocking up on site, showing how keen you are and repeating that. And he eventually got one. Adrian, he is an electrician. He does solar, and he worked within the solar industry for about 5 or 6 years before he even took up his apprenticeship. And Ronan, he did his carpentry apprenticeship on commercial sites in the city, like apartments and things like that. He actually started off as a plasterer. He did 2 years of a plastering apprenticeship, and then he started on site doing some weekend work, helping with some carpentry stuff. And he ended up switching over and doing his full. So he ended up doing 6 years as an apprentice, and now he is a site manager on the Australia Tower, which is the biggest building in Melbourne that they're doing at the moment. So few different ways that you can go about it there. Phil's an electrician. He basically went through the Yellow Pages. That shows how old I am, that the Yellow Pages was still relevant. But he went through the Yellow Pages and he just called electrical companies within our area. So I'm from Warrandyte, and he just called up so many places just saying, I want an apprenticeship. Have you got one for me? Okay, next one. And just kept calling. And eventually that happened. So it just paid off through persistence. And then a friend of mine, Camilla, she's starting her carpentry apprenticeship. She had worked in events and like festivals and things like that. And so she's starting her carpentry apprenticeship at the start of next year. So a few different ways that you can go about it. Like myself, some of them just fell into them and others had to really seek them out. So there's multiple ways that you can go about getting your apprenticeship and which area you might want to work in. So just a day in the life of and what to expect. Expect early mornings. That's something you're going to have to get used to because there's no way around it. It's my first year of my apprenticeship. I was living in Warrandyte, working in Hawthorne. I had to get up at 5 o'clock every morning. And so, so that's something that you're going to have to get your head around because it's there's no way around it, basically. In terms of prep the night before, so making things, I think it's good habits to start making your lunch the night before. You're not going to be on a whole lot of money as an apprentice. Make your lunch the night before because at 5 o'clock in the morning, you're definitely not going to want to do it. Make your lunch, grind your coffee, all those kinds of things. Set good habits at the start because it's so easy to start working and then just be like, oh, I'll buy my lunch, and then you start eating bad food and you waste your money as well. A 7 o'clock start means be there at 6:45. And yeah, rocking up at 7 o'clock is a big no-no. That's late, basically. Be keen, be enthusiastic, show that you want to learn, because other guys on the site who might not be your boss, if you show you're keen, they're more likely to show you stuff. They're like, oh, he's into this or they're into this. I'm going to show them some interesting things. Work hard. It's a pretty no-brainer, pretty self-explanatory. And most of all, enjoy it because it's fun. You can do some really cool things. You get to build some really cool stuff. And at the end of the day, you can look back at something and go, wow, I built that. And that's pretty cool. So these are sort of your options during and after qualification. So there's quite a diverse range of what carpentry means. You can do anything from working on estates, doing more sort of mass production, I guess, which I've done a bit of when I was working in New Zealand. You can also do architectural builds, you can do joinery, you can do, there's so many types, but it's about finding what you're interested in. But these are transferable skills. So later on down the track, you might start in domestic, move to commercial, and vice versa. So it's about finding a boss that suits your needs. You can, I think it's so important to have a boss that's going to be, you know, who's trying to do the right thing by you. And, you know, that might mean doing a bit of laboring for them and working on that relationship to see if they're right for you. Finding a workplace where you will learn. There's no good getting an apprenticeship and then spending 3 years sweeping or digging holes. You're not there for just cheap labor, you're there to learn. And it's also up to you to get the most out of your apprenticeship. You need to, this might sound a bit funny, but you need to annoy your employer. Say, oh, what are you doing here? Go up and ask them, and they'll say, oh, I'm doing this. You know, go back to what you're doing. But keep asking questions. It's important that you try and get the most out of your apprenticeship, because at the end of the day, that's what you're there for. And constantly evaluate your knowledge as you go along. This can be a bit of a hard one because you've got nothing to compare it to. But if you're halfway through your second year and you feel like you're not sure if you're getting enough of what you need, there are other options. You can look at changing over to another company, which is what I did, and plenty of other people have done it as well. If you're not, and it's also, you can expand your horizons working with a different company. In the first year after you're qualified, you learn the most, because suddenly you're asking for full wages, but you're expected to know everything. So, you know, suddenly you're thrown into the deep end and you're not an apprentice anymore. You can't make mistakes. And then from there, which area do you want to work in? You probably have a better understanding of the industry, and you might go, actually, I want to work for myself doing this. Oh, I want to do this. And looking at those options as well. You don't have to just stick with the area that you're in. This is going to be a bit boring, but it's important with the be early. So this is a bit of an old sort of one you'll hear on the side is to be early is on time, to be on time is to be late, and to be late is unacceptable. And it's a bit archaic, but it's true. You have to be on time. There's no two ways about it. And that means, like I said, getting up at 5 o'clock, or, you know, you might not necessarily be working in your suburb. You might have to travel 45 minutes. You might have to travel an hour. And so you have to take that into account. And if you want to get a coffee on the way or whatever, some breakfast, then take that into account. There's no good rocking up 5 minutes late with a coffee in hand. That doesn't go down well. Show initiative. Don't just stand there waiting for being told something. Grab a broom, sweep, clean up, ask, what can I do? What are you doing? And ask these kind of questions. And be annoying. Ask the questions, even if you think it's a silly one. It's expected you will make mistakes. You're an apprentice, you're there to learn, and the important thing is you own them. So if you do stuff up, you don't shy away from it and pretend it wasn't you or anything like that. You know, you're an adult now, you have to acknowledge that you've made these mistakes, but you need to learn from them. And that's how you learn. Make mistakes, you learn from them, you move on, and just try not to make that mistake again. Take your time. This is a safety thing, but also, you know, a learning thing of, you know, once you start doing things, get a good system in place, and speed will happen once you gain more experience. Again, ask questions. Even if you think it's silly or you're not sure, whether it's a safety thing, a learning thing. Make sure you just keep asking questions. Buy quality tools as soon as you can. Don't buy crap because it breaks. I bought really good drills in my first year of my apprenticeship, and I still have them. They're still my drills that I use today. And because I bought quality, and I've had them for over 10 years, 12 years or something. So it's about buying quality tools as soon as you can, because the sooner the more tools you have, the more diverse jobs you'll get to do. And a lot of tradies don't like lending out their tools as well. So this is a big one because I've seen some scary things and I've seen some pretty bad injuries. So this is obviously not how you go about OH&S. Just thought that would be funny, but anyway. Safety first. So it's always so important to take this into account, and it's boring and you've heard it a million times, but I nearly lost my hand with a drop saw, with a broken drop saw. I was lucky. I know a guy who had his, so if you can see my hand, he had this finger chopped off. And so, because it's part of your writing hand, they ended up moving his pinky to that spot so he could write, which is quite a weird looking hand, as you can imagine. I know another guy who can't make a fist. He's got metal plates all in there from a drop saw. These things happen. It's dangerous. So you have to be aware of things that can happen on a building site. And trust your gut. If you don't feel comfortable, if you've been told, do this, get it done, and you don't feel comfortable doing it, you don't feel safe or you're unsure, don't do it. There's no point risking your neck for trying to get a job done quicker or, take your time. And there's a lot of tradesmen who are missing fingers and different things like that. And basic PPE is essential, and buy quality. I've worked with a lot of really deaf carpenters, and so buy good earmuffs and wear them. Don't pretend you're tough by, I won't bother putting my earmuffs on or anything like that, because there's plenty of deaf carpenters. You don't want to be a 40-year-old deaf tradie. OH&S is the number one priority from your employer. They're there to look after you and to teach you. So that's super important. You're to be treated with dignity and respect. Just because you're in a present doesn't mean you can be treated poorly. Bullying on the job site is not okay. It's not allowed. It's illegal, and it's not okay. Don't think that you have to tough it out or you have to, just cop it on the chin, because it's not okay. You deserve to be paid the right wage, including super. There's plenty of people who try and rip off an apprentice. So make sure, if you're unsure, speak to someone. Make sure you're getting paid the right amount. Make sure you're getting paid your super. I wasn't paid my super for about 2 years, and it's a lot of money. It was something like $10,000 that I wasn't paid as an apprentice, which obviously as super goes up. So make sure you're getting paid your super. You deserve to be taught the skills of a carpenter. You're not there to sweep up, which you'll probably have to do, but you're not there just to do that. You're there to be taught. And remember, if you're not getting what you need, there are other options. Don't feel like you're trapped, and just because you're doing an apprenticeship and you're in this position that you feel you have to stay doing it. You can look at moving companies and finding other options, another person to finish your apprenticeship, because it can be hard getting an apprenticeship in the first place. So you might feel like, I've got to stick it out, but no, there are other options. So you'll probably speak to other people in goal setting and in the proper way to go about these things, but I thought I'd just touch on it briefly. So what you're trying to achieve. So you're trying to gain employment and consistent long-term employment and get qualified with all the knowledge that to make a good carpenter. How do I get there? So, that's from doing an apprenticeship to doing, finding the right boss, getting a good resume, all these things, to speak to people. That's another one I probably should mention, is just ask people, speak to people, let everyone know you speak to, whether it's family members, if you play sport, everyone down at the local sporting club that you play at, whatever community you're a part of, school, anything, ask people, do you know of anyone who's looking for an apprentice? Do you know a builder? And oops, lost my slides. Same thing. Keep up the contact. So if you've called people, or if you've spoken to people, call them a couple of weeks later. They might say, oh no, we've got nothing. But if you keep pestering them, it might seem like you're annoying them, but that's how a friend of mine got his apprenticeship. He kept persisting with someone and they ended up not having one, but they're like, this guy's super keen, and they had a friend who was looking for an apprentice. And so that's how it worked out for him. And don't lose heart. Unlike for me, I fell into it and I got offered it, but for some people it takes a little while, but it will happen as long as you're persistent and you keep looking. So that's it. Thanks, everyone. So
thanks, Dillon. We might just ask for some questions. If you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. I've got one question to start us off, Dillon.
Yep.
You said you spent some time overseas. Where was that? And sort of, if you don't mind asking, telling us, and were your skills completely transferable? So is it, once you're qualified, it's, like you've got international access? Is that how it works?
Absolutely. Like I moved to New Zealand, and they have a lot of very similar codes and as we do here, a lot of similar building codes. So the skills are transferable. I worked with guys who'd worked in Canada. I worked with a lot of guys from England, Scotland, Ireland who came over here, and all the skills are transferable. So you can work in a lot of different places with those skills. And, there'll be a bit of an adjustment period, but yeah, there's definitely transferable skills. And I went through, when I went over there, I went through a hiring agency. So I went through and I got work within a week. So it can be pretty easy once you're qualified, have some tools to get work pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, we've got a question from Ahmed about the process of an electrician apprenticeship. Can you give it a stab, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's
Yep.
kind of similar in essence, but the process is first and foremost finding a potential employer. So in terms of if you have any connections, Ahmed, to people you can call, but same thing, Google it. Like if you're wherever you live, just Google electrician. Like I'm in Brunswick East, so I would just go electricians Brunswick East, and then I'd start calling them, and just call them and pester as many people, and that would be your first step, I would have thought.
Thanks, Ahmed, for that question. Anyone else? Another question? Dillon, I'll just ask, like PPE, I know, what are we talking about? Personal protection equipment?
Yep, that's it. So glasses, especially when you're using things like grinders and stuff like that. I got a bit of metal in my eye once. You don't want to do that. It's not fun. And yeah, good earmuffs. Don't just get $10 earmuffs. Spend $50. Get some quality earmuffs and wear them. Get good boots. You spend 12 hours a day in your boots. You're going to use them more than any other pair of shoes that you have. You want them to be comfy. You want them to be secure and safe. Yeah.
Beauty. Thank you. Any other questions, guys? I think you've been very thorough in the way that you've covered that, Dillon. So, thank you. Well, so what we might do is just, Melanie, do you have any questions that you might want to ask Dillon?
No, not really. I think those students that are interested in pursuing the construction, they've researched into quite a bit with tasks and assignments that we've been working on. So those that are interested in even getting part-time work to see if it's what they want to do, I've guided them in that sense to speak to network really. Yep. And speak to family friends. A lot of their family and friends are in that industry, so it's great to maybe work with people they know and get a feel for it, and be inducted into maybe getting a part-time labouring position. In some cases they've been provided with all the PPE, so rather than them forking out anything, they're young. So I'm encouraging them to sort of do their homework and see, by researching being an electrician and looking into it, a lot of them may think, well, it's not really what I want to do. I may want to concentrate on carpentry or joinery or landscaping or whatever. So it's given them a really good insight. I think the prep work, preparing them and having people in to talk to them is really, my husband's a builder, so he's also very keen for them to know the realities of the job, and it's not glamorous at all, and it's hard working and long hours, and my husband's lucky he has me to help him make his lunch every day, so it's more about, and he's been in it for over 35-40 years, so it's those that are unsure about it, just to ask lots of questions, I think. And if you've got the resources available for me to, use that's brilliant. That's what I want. So
no worries. Dillon, just from a carpentry point of view, you did your apprenticeship in carpentry. How does that then extrapolate into, as Melanie was talking about, a husband being a builder? How does that work?
Well, that's the next step. So to be a builder, you don't necessarily have to have been a carpenter. So so basically you have to, so a carpentry apprenticeship is a Cert 3, and to become a builder you need to either do a Cert 4 or a building diploma, and then you need to get your builder's license. You need there's a lot of steps. Like, you need experience, you need proof of experience, having run multiple jobs, and there's different types of building licenses, and then you need collateral. So you need to have a house, or you need to have some kind of, there's a whole process to becoming a builder. It's quite a complicated step, and there's a lot in it, and it's more builders, more the business side of things as well.
Yeah, cool. So if you were to go down that journey, what do you think is the best trade to become a builder?
Well, it would be a carpenter because they're on site from start to finish, basically. That would be your best option if you wanted to become a builder. But yeah, you don't necessarily, there's like plumbers and, you know, you might not even have done an apprenticeship. It definitely helps, but you don't necessarily have to have done an apprenticeship to become a builder.
Yeah, I'll ask Melanie in a tick what her husband has done. But Dillon, we've got a question from Brett. If you were taking on an apprentice, what would you be looking at in a candidate, especially if you have no experience? What are the things that make people stand out?
So first up, I'd get your white card. So your white card is basically your OH&S card, which is a day course. I'm not sure how much it costs, but it's like $60 or something like that. You need it to work on any building site in Australia or Victoria. And so that would be your first step because you need that to come on site anyway.
Yeah, I'll got one of those.
Sorry?
I'll go to work.
Yep, cool.
You've got one? Yeah, it's a good start. Like you're going to need it before anything else. A pre-apprenticeship is super helpful. That will make you stand out. It will show you're keen. It'll show that you've already coming onto site with some knowledge, and I'd highly recommend it just for your own knowledge of just rocking up on site. You've already got an idea of different processes and the basics. Would be definitely up there. A car definitely helps if you've got your license. I'm not sure how old everyone is here, but it's not necessary, like a necessity, but it definitely helps. Like I did my whole apprenticeship without a car. Like I have a medical condition, so I don't drive. So it was challenging, but it would definitely make it easier to get an apprenticeship if you have your own transport. They would be the three main things I would recommend.
Thanks for that. Great. Melanie, your husband?
My husband. Okay. You got a few hours, you got a few days.
Just briefly, what apprenticeship did he go down? What path did he take?
Well, he went carpentry.
Yep.
So he, he left school year 11, I think, from memory, and he's really just worked himself up and educated himself. The best education he had was on-site learning experience. And met, with people, he's still, the most important thing is the networking. Still people he worked with 30 odd years ago, he still has a very good connection with them, and who also had 30 years experience. So whilst he's ensured that all of his, and he's come from an apprentice, like doing really horrible jobs, to now being like a senior foreman on many huge sites, commercial sites. He's had his own businesses as opposed to working corporate. So his dealings with, architects and engineers and everything, or these criterias on a daily basis, it's really like the nuts and bolts of putting multi-million dollar, businesses and tenders together. So
thanks for that.
I think he is really, really self-motivated, which I think you need to be, and he's learnt from errors that have happened on site, which is very costly, but not to him. So he's very, very conscious of ensuring he gets the right people on site. He's dealing with 200 people on site at a time over 3 or 4 sites, so it's huge. So
it can be expanded. Yeah, good on you. All right, thanks, Melanie.
Really important to understand that whilst everyone may start small, there's so much scope, like to have a goal really. And his specialty is heritage listed properties. Over the past, say, 15 years, that's what he has really enjoyed doing. So he takes really hard projects because he likes the challenge and knows the ins and outs of heritage listed. So that's really, a specialty, I suppose, but it's taken him going through a lot of different criteria and experiences to know what he likes doing. So
Thank you. Yeah, good on you. Yeah, that's great. Excellent. So there's the scope there to expand and whatever. So there's a bit of direction there. Thanks, Melanie.
I'll just
Okay.
add on to what Melanie was saying, just in terms of connections are so important. I have people I call for work who ring me for work or offer me work from 10 years ago when I was doing my apprenticeship. So having these connections, knowing other good trades, it's so important going forward in your career. And I can completely vouch for that in that aspect, I think. So
Dillon, from a perspective of young people, like the young people in the audience today, want to get some experience, how would you recommend that go about? Just going and working for somebody for a little bit, getting some work experience? Or I know they can use the SWL process that we run at the LEN, but how did you go about it?
Well, through my school sort of community that I went to, I got my landscaping job through. I was playing footy at the time, and I got a labouring job through one of the guys. Before my apprenticeship. So through those kind of community sort of connections was how I sort of got experience. And I think the best way to go about that is like at this point is have your white card so you're ready to go. Because you might get offered a job and they're like, come in tomorrow, and you'll be like, oh, I can't, I haven't got this, I haven't got that. Be basically ready to go.
Terrific. I've got a question from Rochelle Darby. Dillon, in start, because you've got your own business, what were the successes and challenges, and what would you do differently?
Well, successes is, I guess, building relationships with clients and creating a solid outcome for them, like in a really positive outcome for them, and building those relationships, and then having your name and number passed on to other people, and them calling you up and saying, hey, X loved your work, thought you were fantastic, and then you go on and do work for them. And a lot of the work I've done in the last 3 years is all through word of mouth. I haven't done any advertising or anything like that, and there's quite a gratifying feeling of doing it having that is pretty satisfying, knowing that you're doing a good job, that people pass you on. So, and the challenges, I guess when you're working for yourself, is quoting, and you finish your day's work and you have to go home, you have to quote, and you have to get it right, because you can't, if you go too high, then you lose the job. If you go too unders, then you lose money. So that's definitely a challenge, and you don't sort of switch off at the end of the day. That's the other negative, I guess, about running your own business, is that while you kind of get to do your own thing a little bit, there's a lot more work in terms of coming home, and you end up doing 12 hours a day rather than just your standard 8. And what would I do differently? I got better as I went along, but from the start I'd plan better and put more time into planning a job out in terms of timelines and getting trades in, and that kind of stuff.
Terrific. And can you just tell us about like the work that you're doing now, the studies you're doing now, and how you're using carpentry to your advantage?
Yeah, so like at the moment, I'm studying online, and I've been doing some small cash jobs on the side just while we're in lockdown. So just hanging some doors, replacing weatherboards, things like that. And it's kind of a perfect way to sort of keep your hands dirty and get out of the house as well, by having those little sort of cash jobs on the side. So yeah, the carpentry is kind of, you've always got those skills, so it's never going to completely go away or anything like that. You can still use them to make a little bit of extra money on the side, I guess. So
Thanks for that.